Thank you. So good morning, everybody. My name is Brett Vogelsang, and today I am here to talk to you about the SaaS supply chain agent. So let's go ahead and get started. The sales and operations planning process is generally a monthly cadence cycle where supply chain planning teams and commercial teams get together and they look at forecasting customer demand as well as understanding how their network supports that demand. And generally, supply planners, demand planners run their analysis for this monthly meeting in Excel where they aren't able to do any complex what if or scenario analysis. And as I go through my presentation today, one question that I want you to think about is, what if your sales and operations planning cycle could happen on demand? What if that analysis process didn't take weeks, but it actually just took days? And what if your supply planners and demand planners were able to do more of their analysis faster? So supply chain planning is stuck. Like I just said, this process is on a monthly planning cadence that's locked by manual effort, and the analysis is done through Excel. And according to McKinsey, 45% of annual profits are lost to disruptions over a decade. And additionally, every 3.7 years, a major disruption lasting more than 1 month hits your supply chain. And with the SaaS supply chain agent, you can be better prepared to handle events like this. But before I go into a live demo, I want to give everybody a high-level look at what the SaaS supply chain agent is. You can think of the SaaS supply chain agent as a box. And inside of this box, we have a multi-agent system where we have a few key components. And that's what I'm going to talk about. The first key component is a supply chain optimization agent. This agent is what your supply planners will communicate with. It's going to look at the supply chain optimization model from SaaS, and it's going to analyze the input and output data from that model for you with ease. I alluded to it just a second ago, but this agent is grounded in a bespoke SaaS optimization model. This model is unique to your business. It has unique input data sets, and it produces output data sets after every run. And that is where the supply chain optimization agent works. And all of the analytics that come from the supply chain optimization agent are grounded in SaaS analytics at its core, so that way you can trust the results and trust the numbers that come from the agent and trust that they're not hallucinations. The next key component to the system is our forecasting agent. So this forecasting agent is where your demand planner is going to talk with and interact with, and it's going to analyze the forecasting related data, which this agent is also grounded in a SaaS analytical model, the SaaS forecasting model. This is another bespoke model that is custom to your business. And the input fields for this model is strictly looking at your historic customer demand. Once that historic customer demand is available, then we can run this model and generate a bunch of output tables, which will be used, or at least one of them, will be used as an input table for the optimization itself. So I've also alluded to it as I'm going through here, but the final key component to our supply chain agent offering is your model-specific data. The model-specific data is really what powers your business, and it's what makes this agent possible. The agent can interact with the data, and it can help you as a supply planner or a demand planner really understand your data easier. So with that, I'm going to go into a recorded demo and talk about some of these interactions. And before we start our conversation, I want to show everybody that we have both the forecasting agent and the supply chain optimization agent available to talk to. And both of these agents use the open source agent-to-agent communication protocol. And this protocol requires descriptions of the agent, capabilities, and predefined skills, and descriptions of those skills. and we make those available to look at and review so that way you can understand what each agent is capable of doing. Let's go ahead and start our conversation. And before we go into that, I want to, sorry folks, go back here. And before we go into that, I want to set the stage. So we've already run our updated forecast. Our demand planner has already analyzed their side of the story, and they have also run the optimization model already for me. I'm going to be a supply planner, and I need to understand how the new network looks after this most recent run of the demand forecast, and I want to better understand how it's going to handle a scenario that's coming in. So the first thing that I want to do is ask the agent to just walk me through an overview of the most recent run of the model, of the most, make sure it's running. Yeah, to walk me through the most recent run of the optimization model. And what is going to happen is we are going to route to that supply chain optimization agent. And that agent knows that it needs to look and make sure that we are just looking at the base scenario's worth of information. Like I said, we've just run the demand forecast, and we've just run the optimization, and we're just looking at this baseline first scenario. And it already knows and has knowledge of that I'm interested in looking at the financial aspects of this most recent model run, the customer service levels, as well as the manufacturing plant production levels. And what the agent is going to do is, in parallel, analyze these three different aspects of my network for me, generate an analysis and generate some visualizations for me, and then aggregate all three of these sets of analyses together in one final textual response. So what we can see once we get the result is a nice big textual response that gives a summary of each of these three core components, as well as some artifacts that get returned. And artifacts are a big thing that is returned by each of these agents. So as you can see here, these artifacts that get returned, we return visualizations, we return CSV files, so that way you can analyze them later in SAS, of course. And what really powers these artifacts is making use of the agent-to-agent open source communication protocol. We use A2A's extension framework to transfer this data to and from the agents. We can go ahead and scroll up to look at the response that we received. Make sure we skip ahead here. Okay, so we have our response, and it looks like our revenue is going to stay pretty stagnant, and our total costs are also going to stay between 69 to 89,000. But we do have a spike in revenue in the 9th week of this analysis, so that might be something to look at further. We also are shown customer service levels and plant production and capacity levels, and also some bottom line or next steps are provided to us from the agent. But if we wanted to look at what our revenue, profits, and overall costs look like, we can open up the visualization here, and it will show us each of the 12 weeks in this forecast or in this optimization run, and we can see that week 9 outlier there potentially. But one thing that I'm specifically interested in is looking at the total production in units by all of my manufacturing plants across each of these 12 weeks. So we can see we have a nice buildup between weeks 2 through 8 for our production, and then we taper off after week 8. But I've just received an email from one of my plant managers that they are going to have to schedule some maintenance and shut the plant down for a couple of weeks. And I need to understand how that is going to impact my network, so that way I can go into my sales and operations planning meeting as prepared as possible. What I can do is send this request and send this information to the supply chain agent. And what it is going to do for me is run this scenario essentially for me. I send this request, we reroute to the supply chain optimization agent, and it knows that it needs to go and run this analysis for me. So what's happening here? We are using predetermined SAS programs to go and interact with the input tables of the optimization model. We've shut down plant 3 for those 3 weeks, and then the agent knows that it needs to rerun the SAS optimization model to regenerate those new optimization model results. Once the agent goes through this whole process, it's going to come back to us with some high-level metrics like revenue, cost, profit, things like that. And yeah, as you can see here, we're returned with some high-level metrics here. But that's not the only thing that I'm interested in. I'm interested in understanding how this new scenario, where we've shut down plant 3, compares against that baseline scenario that we all were just investigating a few seconds previously. So what I can do is ask the agent to run a comparison for me where it compares this new scenario where we've shut down plant 3 against the baseline scenario where things are all good and operating as expected. And what the agent can do is go in to each of the sets of data that were created. Again, remember, we have our baseline scenario set of data, and we now have our new scenario set of data with updated input tables and updated output tables. And our agent is going to generate an analysis across each of those sets of data. It's going to generate the same analysis tables and then bring those back for a comparison. So that way the agent can look at the differences between the scenarios and give us a final summarized response of what's going on. So once that happens, what we will see is a nice textual explanation of the key differences. And in this case, I'm interested in looking at the financials and the lost sales differences. And it's going to provide us with an understanding of the key differences and how our revenue, profit, and lost sales numbers look when we are shutting down plant 3 for those 3 weeks as compared to when we don't shut it down at all. So we have the results here. And if we scroll up, we can see that, so it looks like our revenue is going to slightly drop by about 2%, and it also looks like our profit falls slightly as well. So I might need to go back and work with my plant manager to see if we can reschedule this shutdown to a different time period or see what we can do differently so that way we don't have this impact on our profits. We can also see that our lost sales actually isn't impacted by shutting down this plant for those 3 weeks, so that's actually something good. But it might be something that I need to go back and work out with my plant manager. But that's not the only thing that we can do. Let's say you are interested in understanding which manufacturing plants absorbed the production of shutting down plant 3 as it compares to the manufacturing plant's production during the base scenario. So we can run this more in-depth analysis here as well. And again, just to reiterate, what's happening here is the supply chain agent understands that we need to look at both different sets of scenarios, one set of data for the base scenario, the other set of data for the new scenario where we've shut down plant 3, generate an analysis for both of those sets of data, and then compare those analyses against one another so that way we can better understand these key differences. It's going to generate that final comparison for us and come back to us with a textual summary as well as some artifacts that we can review in SAS later on. And I want to take the time now to highlight that all of the analytics that are being done, again, are run based on SAS models. The agent is not creating any hallucinations or not creating any numbers on its own. It's just querying the input and output tables and sharing these results with us to make it easier for me to do my job as a supply planner. So we have the final results here, and it looks like even though we are shutting down plant 3 for about 3 weeks, there are no other plants in our network. It actually looks like production falls only in periods 4 through 6, and there's no other plants that actually absorb that production when we shut down plant 3 here. So that's also something to think about and to look at, and I might need to go back and work with my manufacturing plant manager to see if we can reschedule this maintenance for a different day. And Again, I just want to take the time to highlight that all of the analytics here, all of the scenarios and all of the data modifications and things like that are managed either with SAS programs or by the SAS models themselves. The agent is just doing the analysis for us and surfacing the results to us. And it knows when it needs to run those models when we want to run new scenarios. So in summary, the supply chain agent cuts through complexity, breaking down silos. It allows for demand planners and supply planners to work on the same plane, basically, and allows them to use this same product to analyze their data. It democratizes insights and accelerates decision-making. It allows for demand and supply planners to step out of Excel and to step into the supply chain agent where they can do more complex what-if scenario analysis. And it fits seamlessly into existing operations. So if you're in your sales and operations planning meeting, anyone can pull up the SAS supply chain agent and you all can have a conversation with it right then and there, but you also can have a conversation with it asynchronously on your own time so you can prepare for your monthly meeting. So what's next? For the SAS supply chain agent, if you are interested in hearing more about it, please scan the QR code on the slide and a member of my team or even me will follow up with you to figure out your interest level. And additionally, if you want to get your hands on the SAS supply chain agent, you can head over to our TriZone, which is just around the corner, where we have a suite of 3 different workflows where you can go and ask a few different questions and really get a feel for how this is going to work on your own. And we also encourage, if you have additional questions that go off of the script, please try it so that way you can have a better understanding of the system. Additionally, if you want to talk to me specifically more, I am located at the Ready Made Agents booth. So come find me if you have any more in-depth questions that I don't answer in the next few minutes. And finally, I do want to plug, if you're interested in seeing another type of demo for this agent, my colleague Jessica and I will be presenting at the Spotlight stage this afternoon at 2:50. So if you're interested, you can come to that as well. And with that, I've come to the end of my presentation, so I think we have a few minutes for questions. And if you'd like to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter, you can add me there as well.
Thank you for the presentation. I think this agent is going to be like very helpful for a small supply chain company like Co-op. So my question is like, is it possible to have the agent have access to like email data and then, you know, like the plant manager, like when it got shut down, they send email to the supply chain planner, right? Have that agent automatically read the email, create the scenario, and send it to me via Microsoft Teams. So that's going to be even more like helpful and more streamlined.
Exactly, yeah. So right now we don't directly have an email integration, but you did allude to it. We are working on a Microsoft Teams integration. So let's say your plant manager is in a group chat with you in Microsoft Teams, then they can let's say, the supply chain agent and say, hey, I need to shut down. Let me run this analysis for you. So that way when you log on to Teams and you can see the results, it will provide those for you. And if you check out at the general session this afternoon, you'll get a teaser of what that Teams integration is going to look like.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, just a quick question about, you went through these scenarios. Is it capable of making recommendations or providing a few options, saying like if it has the data to what the production capacity is for these multiple plants based on the forecasting of the demand across this time period? Can you say, okay, this one's getting shut down, give me some options in order to mitigate the impact to sales or profits?
Yeah, definitely. So I breezed through it to get through the different scenarios, but at the end of the textual summary, we had the bottom line or potential next steps, and in that area is where some of those recommendations would come up or further places for you to investigate. And we're also working on some like follow-up questions based on the responses that you get to help guide you to future or additional analysis that you might be interested in.
Other questions?
Probably the first question is non-mathematical.
Okay.
Does your system is aware of any perishable raw materials that can be taken into account if my manufacturing fails or is being shut down. Is there an impact to the cost because my raw materials are perishable?
Yeah, so we have that as a configurable field in the optimization model itself. So whether the goods are perishable or not, and if you have an additional cost for that, we can take that into account when you configure the model. And if you need, let's say, say that's a cost that you want to take into account or not take it into account, we can have a scenario available to do that as well.
Second question is following up to that question. Do you consider the marginal revenue and marginal cost when you are trying to reroute the production to a different plant? Does it provide that impact? What should be the marginal revenue or the cost that I should have a hit in the revenue or
Yeah.
a profit?
Yeah, so we do. So those will be taken into account in the response, and a lot of that is going to be built up based on the conversations that you have. So when you tell the agent that what you're specifically interested in seeing in the responses after you run a scenario, it will learn that you're interested in understanding more about your marginal costs and things like that. So it will update its responses based on your interests.
So you have the historical modeling, deterministic workflow, I assume in your system when you talk about supply agent. What kind of tools and all the configurations you did to enable this AI agent? And then this is the first question. The second one, will this agent able to read, the latest market information and then translate the market information with whatever you configured in the system that affecting your supply chain, whatever the results?
Sure, so I'll answer the second one first. Right now, the agent does not go out onto the internet and understand the most recent market information. So any changes to the data based on, like, let's say you have your customer demand over the last month and you want to update that input table, then that would be a process that you would set up to automatically run and update the data on your own. We can work with potential customers on figuring out what that looks like, but right now the agent is not going to go out and understand what's going on, like, live in the world today and make changes to the data based on that. And then the second question was related to what tools do we use, like, in the agent? So the agent essentially has its different models that it can run, and then it also has a generalizable, like, data analysis tool that it's going to use, and it has an understanding of each of the schemas for your input tables and your output tables. So it understands which tables are supposed to be connected and working together, and that's what it uses to help generate those analyses and those artifacts that you saw. Additionally, there are tools related to the documentation for the agents themselves, but also for the models that power the agents. So that way, if you want to have a better understanding of how the models themselves work, you can ask the agent and it will tell you how it works as well. So those are the kinds of tools that are available in the agents.
All right, any more questions? Got time for one more question? If not, thank you very much for attending, and thank you, Brett.
Cool. Thank you, folks.